This week I was doing a tough weightlifting set with Nina, my trainer. My muscles hurt and a thought hit me. Boy, this isn't fun. Why am I really doing this? Should I just quit? That thought is this whole episode. And I guess I'm probably not alone. Many of us live by no pain, no gain. But it hides a big problem I hadn't really thought about. When the pain or the price of that gain gets high enough, we may not just ease off. We may actually walk away from the habit for good. And that's when every bit of benefit runs into a brick wall. So today, I want to ask two simple questions, or really two questions you might ask yourself that can help you decide when it makes sense to keep pushing and when it's really time to simply maintain the good thing you've already built. You already have enough strength, an adequate weight, a career that actually works with your family life. Yeah, you're not a gifted public speaker yet, but you don't panic anymore about giving a dinner toast. Perhaps it's time to not endlessly pursue more and more. And I guess I've already given away the spoiler alert. I'm not really just talking about exercise. Hi, I'm Dr. Bobby Du Bois, and welcome to Live Long and Well, a podcast about what the evidence can and can't tell us about living healthier lives. As a physician, scientist, Ironman triathlete, and author of several hundred scientific papers, I read the studies so you don't have to, helping you cut through the hype, focus on what actually works, and make better choices for your health. Welcome, my dear listeners, to No Pain, No Gain, or Time to Maintain. Today I want to explore this concept of no pain, no gain. Now, it happened, as I said, with Nina, my trainer, during the training exercise. And I realized I approach many parts of my life with the same no pain, no gain philosophy. Now, it's not entirely wrong. Sometimes pain is the price of getting better. But I want to dig in and talk about the cost. The cost associated with that is the cost of quitting and the cost of the joy. Now, the problem may not be the word pain. It may be the other word, gain. The assumption that more, the gain, is always the goal. Better blood pressure, better eating, more sleep. But think about it. Every health habit charges a tax that we have to pay. It might be soreness. It might be the dread of doing it. It may be continuing feeling hungry or any of that. Now, the tax isn't necessarily bad. Often it is the price of getting better. But when the tax gets too high, people stop paying it. They quit. Maybe it's the set of exercises in general or quitting more permanently. Think about this. Easing off isn't quitting, because let's think about our health and our journey as a marathon, which is 26.2 miles, not a sprint, which could be very short. And think about it, the no pain, no gain philosophy is really sprinting advice. What we need is advice for the marathon, which of course is a much longer process. What drives us to keep pushing? And probably it's decades of what you've heard from parents or friends about how to do better in life. Or it's comparing yourself to others on Instagram, on Facebook or wherever else, and feeling like you fall short. Or, frankly, a sense of just not being good enough. So today, let's think about this no pain, no gain philosophy. Like Ecclesiastes, there are seasons. A season to grow, and also a season not to grow, but to maintain, when you've already pained enough gain. Well, before we get into the rest of things, I'd like to ask you whether you've signed up for my free newsletter, which now includes one-pager action items that I call Dr. Bobby's one-page prescriptions. You'll find a link in the show notes, or just go to my website, which is drbobbyevidence.com. Well, I'd like to connect to a recurring theme in many of my episodes. You may have listened to the one called Compass, Detour, and Parking Brake, which really was kind of a stepping back and thinking about compass focuses on the evidence. A detour is when hype kind of enters the equation. And then there's the parking brake. And that relates to all the episodes I've done on perfectionism. Remember what it's like to drive with your parking brake on. And the whole trip. It's difficult. It's not enjoyable. It doesn't do well for the parking brake itself. And at some point you're like, this is no fun. I often refer to Voltaire and his quote, "The best is the enemy of the good." Perfectionism is that little voice that keeps whispering, not good enough, need more pain for the gain. That's our parking brake happening. And that drains us of the joy. And without the joy, we want to quit. Now, I'm not giving up on the pain gain concept, just whether it needs to be there all the time. So let me begin to build a story around evidence that the no pain, no gain concept is important for us to look at. Gym memberships. 80% of people quit their gym membership within about 6 months or so. Why? The studies that have looked at why people quit, it all relates to this issue of it's just not enjoyable enough. Maybe they were, frankly, pushing too hard. The tax was too high, so they quit. Now, I don't believe we need to train to failure. And there's a great meta-analysis of 15 studies. So they looked at two groups of people doing strength training. One did a very intensive, every set was going to push to the limits. Maybe if somebody had a gun to their head, they could do one or two more, but really they were pushing hard. They compared that to folks who did a kindler and gentler muscle strengthening where they weren't pushing quite so hard. Well, when they measured strength of the muscles and muscle size, they found no significant difference. So you don't have to push yourself to practically die during each weight training set. Well, another study looked at runners. Now, this was an observational study, so you always have to wonder about it. But they looked at the relationship between running, how much you did, how fast you did it, and mortality. And what they found was really reassuring that even 5 to 10 minutes a day of slow running led to a 30% lower mortality. Now, of course, if you do more, you can end up doing somewhat better, but doing a certain amount may just be fine. All right, as I think through this, I step back and I say, there are two different phases as we think about our health journey. One is a growth phase, and the other is a maintenance phase. So many habits, when you begin them, you begin in a growth season because you want to improve, and paying that higher tax is worth it. So if you're just starting on exercise, or you're trying to build your career and you're early in the career, or you're saving to buy a house, you're in a growth phase, and that's where the pain and the gain make sense. But then eventually, and unfortunately, we don't stop ourselves and ask us, are we there? But then there's a maintenance season, and the goal flips from grow, more, to let's preserve where we're at. We've done great work with our weight or blood pressure, whatever it is. And now let's go into a maintenance mode where, frankly, the tax, the pain, the difficulty is lower and sustainable. So the no pain, no gain really only coaches us in the growth season. Doesn't tell us when the growth season ends. Now, in weight loss, we do believe this concept where you might have to work really hard during the weight loss phase, but when you get to the goal weight, then you shift to a maintenance phase. So that's a concept that we believe in. But what about strength training or aerobic exercise or other aspects of life like pushing to grow your career? Or in my case, wanting to have more podcast listeners because then I can help more people. But if we never get off the no pain, no gain treadmill to move to that maintenance phase, then we're in for some trouble. All right, so what's the antidote to this? I'd like to pose two questions that I think will help us. Question number one. Is my goal for this life change, health change, career change something that I'll know that I've reached? Or is it just a concept like getting stronger to chase forever? Okay. If you have kids or you used to have kids, I had kids that are now grown, I now have a grandchild. Remember the kids in the back seat telling you or asking you, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yeah, it's annoying. But it's actually quite profound. Kids have a pretty clear sense of arriving. They got to the restaurant. We got to the hotel. The car stops. You're there. Here's the insight. Most health goals don't have a destination. Lose more weight. Get even stronger. Sleep more hours. Just like an odometer that never stops. A goal that doesn't have a real destination is no pain, no gain, and no endpoint. So think about this. Trade the number that you're targeting with a real destination that you would recognize. So, getting stronger isn't something you recognize as I'm done. But what if the goal was, I want to be able to get off the floor without using my hands. Or I'd like to stand on one leg to put on my socks. Or I'd like to carry my luggage up the stairs without stopping and without huffing and puffing. Or in the area of sleep. I need to sleep 7.5 hours. Well, maybe you should shift that to, do I wake up refreshed? How about what I feel like in the afternoon? Am I feeling sleepy in the afternoon? Or instead of saying I must lose 20 pounds, switch that to, have I lost enough weight that my blood sugar is now out of the pre-diabetic range? So you might be thinking these more functional goals are softer, like getting off the floor and balancing on one leg. But not only are they more focused on our life and what we want, or maybe it's, I want to be able to play golf without having back pain the next day. These kinds of things are actually tied to survival, certainly getting off the floor, balancing on one leg. So now you would be aiming at what matters. And critically, you'll know when you arrive. So Nina asked me, okay, so what are my goals for the next 6 months with my strength work? I thought about it, and I thought about it some more, and I realized I don't need more strength or whatever. What I need is to be able to continue doing what I'm doing. I want to continue to be able to do Ironman triathlons. I want to be able to take care of all the work on our beloved Madrone Springs Ranch and care for our bed and breakfast guests. And importantly, I want to avoid injuries, because when injuries occur, as I've talked about before, you could be out for a long time and have a really hard time rebuilding that muscle. So that's question one. Question two, what season am I in? This is a really important question. Am I in the growth phase or the maintenance phase? For me, with strength, I'm now shifting to the maintenance phase. Now, for you, if it's still a growth season or for some aspects of your life, that's great. Likely some pain is worth it. And keep asking yourself, have I arrived yet? And if you're there, if you're actually meeting those things, celebrate and now shift to a maintenance phase and preserve what you gained at the lowest tax, the lowest burden, and something you can continue. My dear wife, Gail, has an eating program that she follows called Bright Line Eating. And they set very clear guidelines, bright line boundaries in the growth season, what you can eat, how much you can eat. And then you lose the amount of weight you wanted. But then it's very clear that once you've reached that goal, whatever it is, however you define it, getting into a certain bathing suit, whatever it is, that you then shift to a maintenance season for that eating approach. You get to eat a bit more, you get to eat more diversely, and it's sustainable for the long haul. Same person, 2 seasons, 2 very different taxes. And really, that's kind of the whole episode in one marriage. So reflect on where you are. Perhaps it's time for maintenance. Look, if you shift from growth phase to maintenance phase, and then at some point it's like, I'm not exactly where I need to be now, you can always ramp back up. For me, exercise now is in the maintenance phase. For my podcast, I'd still like it to grow, so more pain may be okay. But here's another secret, and I alluded to it earlier in my spoiler alert. This same philosophy of grow, more, runs through the rest of our lives. Now, the evidence is softer, but it's somewhat there. These same questions can work in other parts of your life. And I'll sort of reverse them for the moment. And that is, what's your season for this part of your life, and what's your goal? Those 2 questions. Here's an area where pain and gain really are related and necessary, and that is dealing with anxiety and fear. And no pain, no gain is often the case. So in a systematic review of 21 studies, they looked at using virtual reality goggles as a way to simulate a scary situation. Might be public speaking, might be a social anxiety thing. But what they found was that repeatedly exposing yourself to that pain led to the gain, and that the anxiety fell a bunch. I've talked in the past about EMDR, and that is a similar approach. Here's another one, parenting. We all want to raise our kids to be wonderful kids that are resilient. And at some extent, and again, this isn't something I can point to the right evidence-based randomized controlled trial, but we want our kids to be resilient, to be able to handle setbacks, get themselves back up again, and keep pursuing whatever it is they wanted to do. And that's a bit of a no pain, no gain. Obviously, it has to be done safely, and you want to do it in a way that helps the child grow. The same approach, think about your career. Careers take a toll on your family life and your personal life and maybe your health. Again, there are growth seasons and there are maintenance seasons. Where are you with that? Are you still in the growth phase? Great, be conscious of it, but figure out what your milestone is, your goal when you know you will have enough. Okay, what to do this week? Pick one area. Perhaps where you last thought, should I quit? Then ask yourself the questions. Question 1, what is your end point? What is that functional goal that will tell me I'm there? Again, it may be standing on one leg. It may be that golf without pain. It may be waking up refreshed in the morning, or our blood sugar is out of the pre-diabetic range. That's question 1. Question 2, name your season. Are you in that growth phase? Are you arriving? Are you ready to move forward in a maintenance phase where you can lower the tax to match that season? So for me, now my strength training, I'm not going to have to push till I collapse. I'm going to stop short of that. And then when I do my running, maybe I'll be running easier, walk a little bit more, and not worry about my speed. And Gail's shift from the weight loss phase for her into that maintenance phase. Also, there's the marathon test question. Could I still be doing this in 10 years? If the answer is no, then maybe the tax is too high. You're asking too much, pushing too hard. Lower that tax before it makes you quit. Very important. So where does this leave us? It started with a pretty unheroic thought. Lifting weights, muscles burning. This isn't fun. Should I quit? Well, that's the quiet danger inside no pain, no gain. It isn't wrong that discomfort can drive growth, but it never warns you about that failure mode. When the tax climbs too high, we don't ease off. We may walk away entirely. And quitting isn't a minor side effect. Quitting is the moment the benefits start to disappear. The deeper problem, the assumption that more is always the goal, is in every area of life. Like Ecclesiastes, there's a time for every season, a time to build and a time to maintain. And the way you tell them apart is those two questions. Is my goal something I'll know I've reached? And which season am I in right now? That's where the kids in the back seat are wiser than we are. Are we there yet? It isn't a silly question. It's the one we stop asking as adults. And it costs us. Give yourself a real destination, and you'll know when you arrive. Chase a number that never arrives, and the treadmill just keeps running. Health is a marathon, not a sprint. Growth has its season, but maintenance may be the hidden wisdom of a life well lived. The easier, more sustainable road, not the lazier one. Maintenance is not quitting. Maintenance is quit prevention. And maybe the best habit isn't the hardest one you can survive. It's the one that protects the gain, preserves the joy, and keeps you coming back. A final question. In the part of your health you care about most, are you actually still growing, or have you already arrived and just haven't let yourself say, we're here? What do you think? Let me know if this approach makes sense, what season you're in, and are you there yet? Thanks so much for listening to Live Long and Well with Dr. Bobby. If you like this episode, please provide a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. If you want to continue this journey or want to receive my newsletter on practical and scientific ways to improve your health and longevity, please visit me at drbobbylivlongandwell.com. That's doctor as in DR, Bobby, livelongandwell.com.